completely honest, I hope you guys don't mind VR related content because I got the Oculus Quest. It's amazing and I want to create some VR related content now. Assuming you can even find it because it seems to be sold out everywhere, is the Oculus Quest worth your money? I know you guys are busy, so I'm gonna just say yes, it definitely is worth your money. If you want to know why, just stick around. Alright, a little bit of personal history first. I have always been completely fascinated by stories about virtual realities, virtual worlds, be it The Matrix or Inception, The 13th Floor, anything that has to do with people inhabiting a virtual reality space, no matter the explanation for that, be it technology or magic or living within dreams, that has always fascinated me. And I have always wanted to explore in virtual reality. That's why I was an early adopter of the PlayStation VR. I have it right here. The PlayStation VR. Yeah, I put googly eyes on all these things. I also got a Pimax 4K for the computer, which I'd show you, but I have no idea where that thing is. When I was a little kid back in Brazil in the 90s, my family and I were walking around the mall and I spotted one of these things. I knew these from movies. I knew that this meant virtual reality. I can be inside a little virtual world like Tron or The Matrix, and that got me so excited. But it was pretty expensive, and my dad didn't want to pay I think it was like 15 bucks for 5 minutes. I thought it was worth it. I was super curious to take a look at the whole thing and see what this whole virtual reality thing was all about. But obviously, you know, it wasn't in the cards for me. I would have to wait many years to finally see what virtual reality was all about. And I've had some experience with virtual reality with, like I mentioned, the PSVR, the Pimax, but those things have one fatal flaw. They tether you to some other device, be it your PlayStation 4 or my computer. You always have to be in the same spot, pretty much facing the same way. There isn't a lot of freedom to explore. It's still fun, don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to knock my friends who have the Oculus Rift or whatever other head-mounted display for playing around in virtual reality. It's fun, but it's not quite what virtual reality could be, and that's where Oculus Quest comes in. I have been following the Oculus Quest since it was announced, and I've been so excited for this thing because the promise of wireless virtual reality is pretty exciting for somebody like me. I was skeptical, of course, because they are using basically a mobile phone processor to power this thing. So a lot of people in the VR community didn't think this was going to be up to snuff. But I am so happy to tell you that this is awesome. Obviously, it's not going to perform like a Rift or a Rift S. A Rift S? I don't know what that was. Can you try that again? It's not going to perform like a Rift or a Rift S, obviously. But it's still incredible. So let's take a close look at this. So this is the official carrying case by Oculus. It's apparently a little bit hard to come by. People on the subreddit are reporting that it's sold out all the time. I'm really happy I was able to get this because the whole idea of this thing is that you don't have to play in virtual reality only at your own house. You can take this to a get-together or to show it to your family, to demo it to people. And somebody who's excited about virtual reality, that's one thing I like to do. I like to introduce the concept, the idea, the technology to other people. And it's kind of hard when it's, you know, you have to bring them to your house and the setup is like it's a whole thing. It's not ideal. This thing, on the other hand, in this little compact, like this is to give an idea of the size of this thing. It's pretty compact, and it's not all that heavy. So this is cool. It's awesome to be able to throw it all into one bag and take it outside to show it to other people. So let's take a look at what's in this. Obviously it doesn't come in this. I bought this separately. So you got the display itself. I'm gonna set this aside for a second. I want to show you the touch controllers. So they go into this little hole here and they snap in there. So these are the touch controllers, and you have two analogs right here. Y and X button on the left hand, and A and B button on the right. And I think I just turned them on here. This is really cool. They're not very heavy. They're powered by one single AA battery. I'm going to show it to you here if I can get this open. There we go. This little battery cover here is interesting because it doesn't snap into place like you would expect. It's magnetic. So it's kind of interesting. So these are the controllers, the controllers that you use to interact with the virtual world. In case you have no experience with VR whatsoever, this basically simulates your hand. And to that effect, it has these buttons on the side here that are the grip buttons. So in the virtual world, when you press them, as you can see, you're basically closing your hand. That translates in the game world as picking up objects or interacting with objects. Basically closing your hand around something to use it. You got the finger, you got the triggers right here, right? Analogs, they click, A, B, and then you have a menu button right here, as you can see, and then you have the Oculus button that takes you back to the home page. So these are the controllers, very cool. So this is the actual, let me set this aside for a moment. This is the actual headset right here with the googly eyes. It just makes it so much more fun. So the headset here, as you can see, it's not quite as comfortable as the PSVR. I don't think there's anything else out there that is quite as comfortable as the PSVR. It definitely is the most comfortable headset of all of them. But this is still not that bad. It is a little bit front heavy. It makes me think that maybe in the future, like, 5 years from now, this thing, instead of being, this thick, it's going to be like, much thinner. But for now, this is what we got. The way this works is that it has 4 cameras right here at the front, 2 at the top here, 2 at the bottom here, and this is what basically tracks your environment, giving you 6 degrees of freedom. Now, let me explain what that means to the people who don't really understand VR. Maybe you've had experiences with like Google Cardboard or things like that, where you put your phone into a little thing that gets strapped to your head, and you can look around in Google Street View, or you can watch a 360-degree video on YouTube. That's pretty fun. But the resolution tends to be on the crappy side, and most importantly, you can't really move around in the virtual world. You can look around just fine in the image that surrounds you, but if you move your head forward, everything just kind of follows your head. You're not getting any closer to the things that you're seeing in the virtual world. And that's the difference between something with 3 degrees of freedom, meaning you can look around in all 3 axes, and 6 degrees of freedom, where you can actually physically move in that virtual environment. And this has 6 degrees of freedom, meaning when you look at an object in virtual reality within the Oculus Quest, you can take a step forward close to it and you can see it up close. So on the device here, I showed you the cameras. On the side here, you have the on-off switch, though by default, it turns itself on when you put it on your head. It has a little IR sensor here. I'm not sure if you can see, but it's right there. By default, when you put it on your head, you're going to be covering this, and the device is going to come on. It's very convenient, but at the same time, when you store it, if things move around in the case, or if anything obstructs this little IR sensor here, it's going to turn itself on while you're taking it someplace. And some users have reported that caused the battery to die by the time they got to their buddy's house to play whatever. The thing was at like 50% battery, so I actually turned it off. So it means that when I strap this onto my head, I'm going to show it to you here. The camera's probably not focusing because I can't really see. But basically what you have to do now is press the little side button here to turn it on. It's less convenient, but then, at least your battery is not going to suffer. On the side here, you got USB-C for data transferring between your computer and the Oculus Quest. And for charging, you got 2 3.5mm jack outputs here for headphones, though it routes audio really well without headphones. So I don't like wires, right? So it doesn't work with Bluetooth headphones, which is a huge bummer in my opinion. But the audio routes through the side of the straps here really well into your ears. It's not super loud to the outside environment. So I've been playing without headphones, and this is an experience I've been seeing a lot by other users as well. So there's that. And yeah, that's all oh, and by the way, so down here you have a slider which will physically move these lenses away from one another to account for the distance between your pupils. So that creates more comfort within virtual reality. If you are using this and it's not properly set to the distance between your pupils, it's going to work still, but it might be a little bit fuzzy and it's bound to create some discomfort. And then down here you have the volume rocker. So that's the headset right there. So as I was saying, the cons, right? So it is a little bit front heavy. Some people have been working around that by strapping weights to the back, which some other members in the community have advised against because that creates more weight on your neck, which is probably not a good thing. It makes me excited for the future when when we see an Oculus Quest 2 or even 3 down the road, and I think that's going to happen because this thing seems to be going gangbusters. It's sold out everywhere right now. It's unclear as to whether that's because it's just selling so well or just Facebook/Oculus couldn't keep up with the demand. Maybe they didn't manufacture as many of these things because they weren't expecting to be that popular. It's definitely right now on Amazon more popular than any other VR headset. So I really think this thing is going to make VR go where it's never been before when it comes to popularity and mass appeal. But going back to the cons, it is a little bit heavy, so it can create a little bit of discomfort. It's been fine for me. And I put a lot of time into this thing in the last, I don't know, 5 or 6 days. But I would love if this thing was a little bit more comfortable, especially because I'm used to the PSVR, which is like the cream of the crop when it comes to comfort in VR headsets. And this thing is definitely not that comfortable. Battery life is also not that great. I've been getting around 2 to 2.5 hours in games. I don't watch a lot of media on this thing. People love watching videos in like a virtual theater screen. I don't really see the appeal because when I'm watching a video on my iPad or my phone, I'm holding it close enough to my face so it occupies a lot of my field of vision, so it's big enough. The resolution ends up being better than watching a video through this, and I don't have to strap something to my head. So there's also that. I'm not a huge fan of watching videos. I do understand that battery will last longer if you're watching videos as opposed to playing games for obvious reasons. The processor isn't working quite as hard when you're just watching media. And the final con, but this is something that's going to change very soon, as a first generation device, and there's some debate in the community as to whether or not it's reasonable to consider this a first generation device. The Rift and the Rift S has been around for a while, and Oculus has been working on VR for a while, but this is the first completely wireless true VR headset, so I consider it a first gen device. And as such, the library is a little sparse right now, which is not to say it didn't launch very strongly. It came out with some 45 titles, which is unheard of when it comes to video game consoles, right? So it was a strong launch, don't get me wrong, but aren't a lot of killer apps just yet, which again, reasonable. This thing came out, what, some less than 3 weeks ago. So that's pretty much all the cons. And I guess there's one more thing, which I mentioned at the beginning. It's powered by a mobile chip, basically the processor you'd find on a 2-year-old phone. So it's not running state-of-the-art technology, definitely not when it comes to the processor. So obviously there's going to be some downgrades in the games that are getting ported to this thing. That being said, they are still incredibly fun. Now, of course, the pros. It's pretty light. This is all there is to it. This and the controllers, and you can take this anywhere. Setup takes no time whatsoever. Setting up a PSVR, by comparison, is a nightmare. There's so many cables, and you gotta plug something into your PlayStation. It's too much. This thing, you put it on and you're playing. Too many times I wanted to play a game, be it on the Pimax or on my PSVR, and I just couldn't be bothered to mess around with it to get it to work. And then when it comes to Windows-based VR, you know how it is. Sometimes the games don't run properly, the thing doesn't, you have to troubleshoot stuff. This, being able to just put it on and be instantly transported into a virtual environment, that makes up for everything it lacks, for the weight on your head, and the fact that the processor is a little bit older, the fact that the games don't look quite as sharp as they do on PC or on PlayStation 4. That makes up, like, comfort and ease of use trumps everything as far as I'm concerned. Price-wise, now this could be a con or a pro depending on how you look at it. This is the 128 gig model, which I believe goes for $500 American. This is $700 Canadian. I live in Canada, so that's what I paid for it. And it isn't cheap. Obviously, it's not cheap. But it is much cheaper than the alternative. Say you want to play PSVR, you'd have to buy a PlayStation 4 and the PSVR. If you want to play PC VR, then you have to have a computer that's good enough to run that, and then buy, say, a Rift S or an HTC Vive, which is going to run you way more than those $500 for the larger capacity Oculus Quest. So it's like a situation where it's both expensive but not, because if you're looking to buy a piece of an electronic entertainment device, you are looking at dropping a couple $100 anyway. And I would say this, I'm gonna get way more use out of this than, say, an iPad, which would be similarly priced. Now for the games, that's what matters. The games this thing can run are incredible. So you got Superhot, which is a shooter slash puzzle. If VR already makes me feel like I'm in the Matrix, a game like Superhot further solidifies that impression. In Superhot, you're basically fighting a bunch of different assailants with guns and knives, and you're punching them. The gist of the game is that time only moves when you move. So as long as you stand still, you can survey the situation, see where the attackers are coming from, and then plan your attack accordingly. So you're punching them, grabbing their guns from midair, and then maybe there's a lot of shots and guys coming, so you stop and time stops, and then you kind of look around, okay, I gotta change my plan here because I just screwed everything up. So you grab a gun and then turn around, shoot the guy, punch the guy, drops his gun, you grab that gun in midair. It's just, it makes you feel like a cross between Neo and John Wick. very appropriately played by the same actor. Superhot VR is a must-play, absolutely. It's funny because this game wasn't originally a virtual reality game, and I cannot even imagine playing this game outside of VR. This is a VR game as far as I'm concerned. You got Keep Talking and Nobody Explodes, a game that I put a lot of time into with my PSVR. Basically, the person who has the headset has a bomb in their hands, literally in their hands. You're holding it and you're manipulating it, which makes it better than the PSVR version I was used to because you had to use the DualShock controller, which isn't as fun. So the people around you have the manuals for bombs on their phones, because you can just look up the PDF for free on the internet. And then you're describing the bomb you see to people outside, and they're going through the manual trying to figure out, based on the elements you're describing, how to disarm the bomb. It's one of those games like Papers, Please or Overcooked that is very frantic and even a little stressful, but it's so much fun. Angry Birds on VR is a game that I didn't expect to like as much as I did. It's basically Angry Birds. I don't have to explain anything else other than that, but in 3D, and you can move around and you can look at the little structures that you're supposed to demolish from different angles. It's a lot of fun. There's a decent amount of replay value because you have to 3-star all the levels, you know, for full completion. It doesn't have as many levels as the cell phone classic, and I don't feel too bad about calling Angry Birds a classic. It's what, 10 years old now? It's a lot of fun. It's super intuitive. It's one of those games that you can just give to somebody who never even put on one of these things before and give them the controllers, and they'll instantly understand what's up. They see the slingshot, they see the birds, they will know right away. You don't have to tell them anything. And it's really interesting to see people just like knowing what to do. It harkens back to the time of the Nintendo Wii, where you could give your mom or your grandmother the Wiimote in Wii Sports and they would instantly know what they're supposed to do. Space Pirate Trainer is one of those games that makes you feel like a badass. So basically you're a space pirate in training and you got 2 guns, one for each hand, and you can swap them out for this like lightsaber kind of thing that also shoots lightning, and you can grab things, and you have waves of drones that are shooting you. There's also a little bit of bullet time. That little whip thing can turn into a shield. There's different firing modes for the gun. It's really exciting. It's hard to describe, but it's a really exciting game, and it makes you feel like a badass while you're fighting off wave after wave of these little automated drones that are trying to shoot you down. Now for a game that's not actually officially out yet, but I've been having so much fun with the alpha that I couldn't not talk about this. Pavlov VR. I've heard about this game before, but I wasn't curious enough to get into it. The developers are bringing the game to Quest, and they put out an open alpha for people who want to play it. And they made it very clear that this is very early in development. The game is super bare bones, but it's already so much fun because of how realistic the game is with handling weapons. The way you reload the guns and you pick them up, and you're out of ammunition, you drop a mag out and then you reach around your waist area and you click the trigger button to pick up another magazine, and you slam one into the other as if you would with a real gun. Then you have to slide the thing back, and you're performing all of these actions in the virtual world. It's so immersive, like so incredibly immersive, even though the graphics don't look as good as they would if you were playing this game on a Rift S. The fact that I can play this anywhere online, like the alpha has an online multiplayer component already. You can also play against bots. It is incredible. I put some 3 or 4 hours into this game, which is ironic because I bought this thing, Firewall, the equivalent experience on PSVR, and it's nowhere near as much fun as Pavlov VR because of the way the weapon handles. Like this thing, this simulates a rifle in your hand, right? It feels good when you're shooting and walking around and you look down the iron sights as you would with a real gun, so that happens in the virtual world as well. It's very satisfying. But then I have to reload the gun, and then I just press a little button here in the back, and then the illusion is completely shattered. Whereas in Pavlov, I actually physically grab the magazine out of the gun, then reach for another one, slam it in, then cock the gun while there's bullets flying and people yelling, and I'm trying to hide behind things, and it just adds to the realism in a way that I've never experienced in any video game ever. Pavlov VR, and this is not sponsored obviously, when this game comes out, I'm buying it immediately. Speaking of buying immediately, I've been having so much fun with this thing. My girlfriend had way more fun with this thing than I thought she would. She never was that curious about my PSVR, even though it's been available to her for the entire time we've been dating. But she was instantly curious about this thing. She had a lot of fun in Beat Saber, which is another must-play for this. Beat Saber is basically a rhythm game where you're holding lightsabers and you're slashing these colored boxes that are flying towards you. It's very simple and so much fun, so satisfying. There's already a way to mod the game in the Oculus Quest to add new songs, something I couldn't do in PSVR. So immediately this already becomes my favorite way of playing Beat Saber. But as I was saying about buying immediately, she had so much fun with this thing that I actually... This is supposed to be a surprise. Her birthday's coming up, so I picked up another Oculus Quest because I want Okay, let me put this down. Because I want her to play this with me. I want her to get lost in the virtual world with me. Baby, you're welcome. I just nicked myself with this thing here. Holy crap. I need to go file a WCB form. I'll be right back. This is what makes me believe that for the first time ever, VR has an actual chance to become a mainstream thing. Because if Natalia got that excited, she was never that curious about this thing. I tried to get her to play Beat Saber in this, and she wasn't interested. But she was instantly curious about the Oculus Quest. She started asking me about pricing, about where she could buy one, and that made me think, like, this is it. VR. This time, it could really go mainstream. And for that reason, I'm so excited about the Oculus Quest. So, like I said in the beginning, I think it's worth your money. There are obvious issues with this thing. It is lower powered than, say, PC VR. And the library isn't as big as, say, what you can do with Steam VR. Though, and I don't want this video to get much bigger, but you can stream your Steam VR games into this thing. It's a whole thing, so I'm not going to get into that right now. But suffice to say, this thing exceeded every single expectation I've had. I'm putting so much time into this. I love this thing. Like I said in the beginning, this might become a VR channel. I might do a bunch of VR content from here on out because I love this thing. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. This has been a fairly comprehensive review of this product. I am 100% in love with the Oculus Quest, fully believe in its potential, and it makes me very excited for the future of VR. But how do you feel about this? Maybe you hate VR, didn't work for you, got motion sickness, you don't believe in the concept, do you think it's just a gimmick like the Wiimotes were back in the day? Like, what do you think? Let me know in the comments down below. As always, follow me on social media if you don't already. I'm very active on both Twitter and Instagram. Just got verified on Instagram, so that's cool. I feel validated. I feel like all of this is building towards something. If you're new to the channel, consider subscribing, dropping a like. That helps so much. Share this video with a buddy who's curious about VR. That also helps so much. And that's all the time I have for today. I'm Izzy, and I'm done.